Get ready to listen to the greatest heavy metal podcast of all time! Heavy Metal War Stories with your host, Stevie Peavy.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Stevie Peavy, everybody's favorite guy, back with you right away on Heavy Metal War Stories. How about that? Less than 2 weeks after the last one, already doing another one. I know a lot of you guys probably wrote it off. Said, well, it was fun while it lasted, but he's clearly not doing him anymore. But I hope I've done you proud by being diligent and doing another one. So today we got a cool episode. We are talking about Kiss. Again, we talked about Kiss with Miss Guy from the Toilet Boys, and that was early Kiss up to Alive. But today we are really getting into it. We're really getting into it with a guy named Hugh Asnan. He is the host of Partners in Crime, which is an all Kiss, all the time podcast. It's a really cool podcast. He'll tell you a little more about it, but we are going to go in depth for the rest of the makeup era from Kiss today. So that's going to be a cool one. I've been playing a lot of cool songs on this podcast. You know, we had some good shocker songs on last episode, and most guests we've played their stuff, but you know who we haven't played is any of my stuff. And you know, I've been checking out some other heavy metal podcasts. I listened to Jim Florentine's podcast, and he was thanking someone for sending him like $1,000 to keep the podcast going. And other people have been sending him some nice donations as well. And, you know, no one has to send me any money. I'm sure I'll patch things up with my dad and be back in the mansion before too long. But, you know, if you do like the podcast, why don't you email us? It's dsdgods@gmail.com. But why not check out my band, Death Squad Demon Gods? It's a pretty new band, but we're doing some cool things. I'm going to play a song right here, and if you like it, go get it for yourself. Free download it, deathsquaddemongods.com. Anyway, this is the title track for the band, the album and the band, Death Squad Demon Gods. So here it is, your new favorite fucking song, premiering on Heavy Metal War Stories.
Death Squad Demon
yeah. All right. Well, I don't like to brag, but did that kick ass or what? So if you want that song for your very own, type Death Squad Demon Gods into Google or go on our website, deathsquaddemongods.com. You can download that track for free right now. Won't stay up forever, but hopefully you get it in time. And check us out on YouTube. We got a lot of live stuff on YouTube. I don't usually pimp my stuff, but I felt I would today. Anyway, we have got a great guest, a guy who really knows his Kiss. I hope you're a Kiss fan. If you are, you're going to love this one. If you're not a giant Kiss fan, listen along. So maybe you'll hear something that makes you want to delve into this band. So anyway, we got Hugh Asnett. He is the host of Partners in Crime, the awesome Kiss podcast. Hugh, tell everybody about your podcast.
Well, I have something on MySpace that was called Partners in Crime Kiss Discussion. Now, the address I'm not really even sure of at this point. It's something that I haven't done for a year. Although, as crazy and as much as it sounds like I'm putting it aside and minimizing it, I will tell you, just like Kiss, I am very passionate about that show that we did, and we did make a few friends and get a few people following it for that little amount of time, and eventually we are going to resurrect it. That's all I'll say at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if you sold that quite as high of as self-promotion as you possibly could have. You could have said, well,
Well, I mean,
the greatest.
Oh, you mean just now?
Hey,
Or you mean when I was doing it?
No, just now.
Okay. No, I'm really passionate about it. I think it was really good.
Right. Yeah, I listened to a couple episodes. It was very in-depth. So if you're a Kiss fan, Partners in Crime, the reason it's called that is why?
Well, because we were trying to think of a good name for it, and so we thought name it after a Kiss song, and because Partners, me and one other guy.
Right.
Just makes sense.
That works on so many different levels. So anyway...
just like Kiss.
Just like Kiss. So anyway, I thought you'd be a great person to have on for the second Kiss podcast on Heavy Metal War Stories. As a lot of dedicated listeners know, we talked about early Kiss with Miss Guy from the Toilet Boys, and that went pretty well. Basically, early Kiss, we considered everything up to the first live record, Alive. So
yeah, I'm
thinking we're going to do like mid-period Kiss, and I'm not going to stop it at Alive 2. I'd say anywhere up until kind of the makeup years, I think, is in bounds. But I know I'm not going to have to prod you for opinions and stuff because you're such a diehard Kiss fan. But did you have anything to say, like before we jump into like Destroyer and moving forward about like the stuff before? Like any quick words about the first three records and the live record that you want to get off your chest?
I'll say this. I'll say that if somebody took away the rest of the Kiss stuff after that, I'd be pretty sad, and said you can never listen to it again. I'd be pretty darn satisfied staying with just those first three albums. I don't even want to include the live album because it's kind of, to me, a retread. I'm not much of a live album guy.
See, I have to disagree with you staunchly. I mean, I like Hotter Than Hell and Dress to Kill, but Alive pretty much makes the first Kiss record unlistenable to me. Just every song practically is on the live record, and they all sound way ballsier and way more energy.
There's a certain kind of rock fan that just doesn't jive with live records, really, and I'm one of them. It's not common. Mm-hmm. I'm an anomaly, but I
could see getting tired of hearing the "everybody like to take a taste of alcohol" on a record.
I love that. That's worth remembering. That's worth listening to Alive just so you can hear that. But see, in this day and age, a guy like me would take that and edit it, because editing software is so easy to use these days. Take that off and put it on the actual Cold Gin, the studio version, and then you'd have like a perfect.
Nice. Okay. Well, I feel a little. There's a little sadness in my heart that now we're gonna move right on and go to your less favorite eras of Kiss.
No, it's weird. One other thing, please. I'll try to be as brief as possible in answering these questions, but I have to take the floor one more time so people know where I'm coming from. I am not your typical hardcore Kiss fan. I am a hardcore Kiss fan, but I did not grow up listening to all those albums. When I first started delving heavily into being a hardcore Kiss fan, it was already Asylum era. So with that in mind, I could talk about any era of Kiss, but I had to lay the groundwork there that, you said something just now about not being into the second phase of their career that much. I'm into every phase.
Yeah, I don't think I'd go as far. I think there's some eras that need never be revisited. But I will say, Asylum is the first record I ever heard too, and at the time I thought it was really good. I don't even own it anymore. Don't really care to ever hear it again. But at one time, I'm like, hey, this is so good. I want to check out the earlier stuff by this band.
Yeah, it's good. I like it. I love hearing you talk so bluntly about like despising certain eras.
Well, I mean, but as a nice segue, we're going to get off on an era that I don't despise at all,
right.
And that's that's right when they started really taking off with like kind of Destroyer and from there. So Destroyer, What do you think about that?
Well, for a time, I thought Destroyer was their best album.
Really?
So, but and that doesn't mean I stopped liking it. I still think it's one of their best. But after a while, it started to dawn on me that it just didn't have the simplicity that I think as I grew. Well, I'm 40, and I think going from like through my 30s, I became more interested in Meat and Potatoes arrangements and things like that. And Bob Ezrin is not known for Meat and Potato arrangements. So I have to say that Destroyer, instead of being a 10 out of 10, kind of moved down to like a 9 or an 8.5. But I still think it's a great album. I think that there's not a weak song on it. Looking back onto the album, it is kind of funny, though, a song like Great Expectations, it's almost like, oh my God, like that could be like out of a musical.
Yeah,
or something. It's so corny.
Yeah, that was corny. And if you think about it, Great Expectations has a lot in common with a lot of stuff on Gene's solo record. Like Gene, obviously, he wanted to be the demon. He wanted God of Thunder, even though he didn't write it. That was when the album it was on. But then there was just that weird showbiz, show tune thing that he kind of did on his solo record that kind of got started, I think, with Great Expectations.
No, and you know what I also suspect? I mean, this is just a shot in the dark here, and maybe it's coming from the fact that, maybe I'm just imprinting my feelings as a songwriter on him. But I've heard other songwriters, and you're a songwriter too, tell me what you think. It's very hard when you're sitting at home to write rock songs compared to ballads and, showier tunes. A lot of times are ballady like Great Expectations. I think that Gene was one of those guys that couldn't help but write slower tempo things like more often than not and needed to be pushed a little bit more to write rock and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think I'm pretty much I can write the real rock stuff even if I'm just sitting at home. I sometimes I do that even better than when I'm with my band and everybody's just too loud to kind of figure out what's what. But I feel like he did better on Going Blind, than Great Expectations. Going Blind was just creepy. It was odd. He's this 93-year-old dude with a 16-year-old girl, and Great Expectations was very like on the table. Like, hey, I'm a big rock star, and you guys are seeing me play rock, and I'm me, and you guys wish you were, or something like that. It wasn't cool.
You got to be a really great writer, entertainer to pull off the direct crap. That's why I give Sammy Hagar so much crap, because he's direct and he's crappy at it most of the time. And yeah, so that's the difference between Going Blind and Great Expectations.
Yeah.
Right there is that it's much easier, I think, to come off to guys like you and I, if guys with taste, to come off better with a song like Going Blind.
So I mean, Kiss was really taken off there, and Detroit Rock City, another classic, but King of the Nighttime World, also a classic, God of Thunder, but
love it.
Nothing else, maybe Do You Love Me, but nothing else really was a live staple for the rest of their career. But I guess 4 songs out of 10. Oh, Beth, 5 songs out of 10. Okay, I take that back.
No, I mean, they've always touted that album as being a great source of live material for them because it's such a big seller.
And this was the album that every album after that, for the end of time, Gene Simmons could go, well, the new album is a bit of modern tastes meets Destroyer.
See, and that's probably one of the reasons why it stayed such a favorite of mine for so long, because he was pushing it in my ears.
Right. I'll just tell everyone, in case they don't know, that Hugh is unabashedly a Gene fan. If he had to pick the most valuable player in Kiss, it's definitely Gene. Is that right?
Well, not only that, but you were kind of reading my mind because I was tempted to say, and now I will say it, that I am happy to celebrate Detroit Rock City and King of the Nighttime World. And that's why I laughed earlier, because I'm like, I don't know how much, this is a great era to talk, because we're going to soon get to songs like I Stole Your Love and stuff like that. And it's a great Paul era, because eventually I just went so Gene and put Paul aside.
So there was a certain point of time where you're just like, I don't even want to hear anything Paul's singing.
Exactly, but we don't have to go there.
Yeah. Okay. So let's not get too scattered. So I know Destroyer had a great tour, I think, and I see some rare pictures of their stage. The stage looked cool. There's tons and tons of photos and video of the Love Gun Rock and Roll Over stage and costumes. There's not that much of Destroyer, but it looked a little more slapped together, not quite as showbiz yet. It was a little like more evil. And I don't know. I think they just looked really cool. It might have been their coolest look was Destroyer.
Well, it's definitely just like the album. I think the tour reflected some of the most it seems like whenever Ezrin comes into the picture, they put a lot of thought into what they're doing.
Yeah.
And this time, it sounds like you think they succeeded, and I say, why not? At that time, I was, 8 years old and not going to concerts, and then, as you know, I'm not that big of a live guy, so I haven't studied like a lot of the live videos, but I've seen what you're talking about briefly, of course, being the big Kiss fan that I am. You couldn't avoid it. And hey, yeah, I'll buy that for $1. It's better than the Asylum lightning bolt planks that they had.
Yeah, definitely. And interestingly enough, there's almost no footage of the Asylum tour either. It's strange. But forget Asylum for now. Let's go to Rock and Roll Over. Rock and Roll Over. I'm going to say if you like Meat and Potatoes Rock, then you're going to love Rock and Roll Over, because there's nothing frilly about Rock and Roll Over. It's just quick songs about sex and stuff like that. Every single one, but some great tunes on that one. What do you think?
Yeah. To me, Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun are one of those, like, tough for me because I didn't grow up and get each album as it came out. They sort of blend, like Revolver and Rubber Soul, or used to be even Women and Children First and Fair Warning. I kind of had that feeling, but eventually such a big fan, I separated apart. I'm still stuck. To me, it's almost like part one and part two of the same album, and it's great.
Really?
It's great.
I disagree. I feel like Rock and Roll Over is a ton of 3-minute rock songs to just kick your ass, but then Love Gun has a lot of experimentation, a lot of, Then She Kissed Me, weird, almost human. I don't know. There's some weird, Love Gun's getting back almost more like Destroyer with a bunch of kind of, trying to please everyone instead of just doing meat and potatoes rock and roll.
Well, you know what? You make a good point, and you may be the one that gets me to start thinking differently. I need a lot of prodding these days with my Alzheimer's setting in, but that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And to me, I just want to make another Paul Stanley, God bless him, supporting Paul here, comment. This is a great time for Paul, as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of people talk about how great Mr. Speed is.
Yeah.
It's like the hardcore Kiss fans. To me, I think Mr. Speed's really good, but I think Take Me is one of his best songs. And people don't talk about that song enough, so I want to give a shout out to Take Me.
Mr. Speed's on Love Gun and Take Me's on Rock and Roll Over, right?
Actually, Mr. Speed and Take Me are on Rock and Roll Over. Now, I'm cheating right now. I'm looking at the song.
All right, then I have failed as a diehard, knowledgeable Kiss fan. But I will agree with you. I am a big fan of Take Me. Mr. Speed's only okay in my book.
Okay.
And, of course, Dr. Love is so great. And I'm going to go on a limb. A lot of people don't like Peter Criss's Baby Driver. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of like the Peter Criss presence. His songs range from okay to okay, with me. I'm never like really excited about them. But the one thing is, if they weren't there, I think it would be taken away from Kiss's like image as this like lead vocalist thing. And I really enjoy it. In fact, that's one of the things that Rock and Roll Over is lacking. I mean, and all the albums before it is no Ace Frehley lead vocal. We had to wait until the next one.
Yes, but I will disagree. I think Beth sucks. I liked it, I think, when I was an insane Kiss fan and had to like it. had to like everything kind of. But I don't like Beth at all. But I like Peter Criss's contributions on. I love the way he sings Black Diamond. He sung Mainline on the second record. He sung Getaway on the third record. Like all of those. He sung Let's Not Talk About Beth, and Baby Driver was great. You know, I mean,
Hooligan is funny.
Hooligan, I enjoy Hooligan. It's maybe not the greatest song in the world. That's on Love Gun. And then
the poetry reminds me of Ace Frehley.
Hooligan really should have been sung by Ace. You know that Hooligan.
And Won't Go to School Again. Rhyming with Won't Go to School Again. It's just such an Ace
If
line.
you think about it, what if Peter sung Shock Me, and to become this huge classic, and Ace's first vocal was Hooligan, and everybody's like, yeah, Ace, you know what? Maybe you don't sing. It could have happened.
I don't know. That's a what if that I can't even begin to fathom.
Yeah, so like Baby Driver, a lot of people don't like Hooligan. I like Hooligan. I don't love Love Gun. I think there's some great stuff on it. I Stole Your Love, Love Gun, Shock Me. I like Hooligan. I like Plaster Caster, and I think that pretty much is where I end with Love Gun. I don't really love the rest of it.
Well, to me, I think I like those Love Gun and Rock and Roll Over about equally, and that means, like them pretty darn much. And one thing that I will say is I Stole Your Love, it possibly could be Paul's best song to me out of anything he's ever done.
What's weird about I Stole Your Love was the very first time I got Love Gun, I was a little kid, and, it was like late 80s Kiss, and no one liked them, and I'm like, I just got into them, and of course everybody else was into, if they were into hard rock, they were probably into Warrant. And I was like, but I want to talk about Kiss. And, people were probably more into Dramarama or anything. They're like, get away from me. So finally I found this guy who, like, his brother, or he had tons of Kiss LPs. And he said he'd sell them all to me for $1 each or $2 each. And so I got Love Gun as a part, I was just like unearthed this giant treasure trove of Kiss LPs. And I got Love Gun, and I wanted to hear the title track first. So I put it on, and I was like, this sucks. And it turns out it wasn't the title track. I'd put the record on upside down, and it was I Stole Your Love. And I was just like, well, this is a bad song. And then I heard Love Gun. I'm like, this is a good one. But, of course, I don't know when I changed my mind. I realized I Stole Your Love is great. Great riff. Great simple lead by Ace on that one. And, that's pretty badass.
I mean, it's funny that you say that, because they must have thought it was a pretty strong song to have it as the lead-off track instead of Love Gun, which was not only the title track, but supposedly is Paul Stanley's favorite Kiss song.
Yeah, and isn't there something that Gene doesn't like? I've heard this rumor, and maybe, you're a connoisseur of rock trivia. I've heard Gene doesn't like it, or maybe, and Paul hates a few Gene songs, and Gene hates a few Paul songs, but they have to play them.
Well, that's the thing that I know some things and forget some things, and who knows where we're right or wrong. But I will tell you that Love Gun, as far as I can remember, is Paul Stanley's favorite song. I don't know what Gene's feelings are on that, but I want to say that I do remember reading multiple times that Paul Stanley is not a big fan of one of my favorite Kiss songs.
I Love It Loud?
Yeah. Exactly. So that.
Like the Mind Meld. Yeah, and they haven't played I Love It Loud. I think I Love It Loud is great on studio. It's okay live. And I don't know how Paul Stanley can complain. It's not like he hasn't written some really doofusy songs himself. And I Love It Loud is a great song.
Yeah. Well, I'm fine despising Paul Stanley in so many other ways that the fact that he doesn't like I Love It Loud is not high on my priority to be like, Paul, you naughty guy. But
I can't wait to see where this goes. We'll do a few more album by album things, but the fact that you said you I kind of really can't stand what Gene has become, and the fact, we'll get into this with this Paul versus Gene thing in a little bit.
Yeah.
But before we do, we've pretty much hit on the second three classics. We had 3 classics and a live record, another 3 classics, and here comes a live record. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think there's nothing about this whole. I'd say the first 3 records, if they just, I told Miss Guy this, if they'd crashed their plane right after, the Alive, I mean, even Rolling Stone would be hailing them as this proto-punk, theatrical, kind of like Alice Cooper, badass, amazing band. And the second 3 albums took it a little bit in the showbiz way, but it really it was after those 3 when the Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park and all the nonsense came. What do you think?
Well, Wow. I mean, I'd love to be like very intelligent about what I'm saying here, but just off the top of my head, it just seems like they did what it took to become the most popular band in the world. That's what it took, and it worked. So who am I to criticize and think that something went like too far or too showy or too? They took a path because they wanted to be the most popular band in the world. Did all four of them want that as a goal? Maybe Ace just wanted to get his dick sucked. I don't know.
I think Ace just wanted booze, and if his dick got sucked, then that was a bonus.
I think Paul might have wanted to get his dick sucked too, but I think Paul and Gene both really wanted to be the biggest band in the world.
All right, but then I think you'll agree with me that even if they did a couple weird things during this point, on their goal to becoming the biggest band in the world, they also kicked major ass all throughout this point.
Well, yeah, they did. They did. But you know what? I think that what the first three albums have going for them is I don't think they really saw that they could really, be the biggest band in the world, or it was within their grasp, and that they didn't really, because of that, they didn't really know what it was going to take. And they had to kind of change their minds with Destroyer. And then once then, all bets were off. Then things like The Elder and I Was Made for Loving You were possible. But before that, what they had going for them as this like cool kick-ass band is that they didn't know any better or any worse.
Yes. But okay, so here we go with a Phantom of the Park. Any redeeming value to this, or is it just horrible through and through?
I want there to be redeeming value to it. I watch it every so often, like hoping I'll be more entertained than I actually am. But it's not an easy watch for me. I get distracted easy. Because the reason why I say that is because it's the only thing they did that was like that. And I don't mind cheesy movies. I'm a big fan. I watch Three's Company all the time. I can handle it. So, but it is hard to watch. And I think one of the things that sucks is that in the beginning, it feels like Kiss isn't in it enough. If they were doing more of that, there's that guy that wrote that book and it was called Take It Easy, Catman or something. You know what I'm talking about?
No, not at all.
Well, it's a Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park book, about the whole process and about, all the surrounding drama and everything. And the title is reflective of what there should have been more of in the movie. Them saying stupid lines to each other. It would have been fun and funny. And
I think I know what you mean when Paul's like, "Take it easy, Catman. What do you think, demon?"
Yeah, that's
without
that's
them,
like a line.
No powers.
See, I mean, if there was more Kiss saying more of those quotable things, I think the movie would have been easier to watch. It would have aged well.
I barely even. I mean, I know those lines because I've seen clips. It's not because I watched the movie over and over again and memorize them. There's horror. I'm a fan of one of my mentors in podcasting is Sleestack 1971, and he has a soundboard where it's like "Take it easy, Catman" or "Hey Curly" or so I know most of my lines just from
the editing again. It's like I was saying about with the tequila line with Cold Gin, you just take it out and you listen to it over and over
right.
again. It's
so
good.
All I know is that it I don't know if it shows that music is just this redheaded stepchild of the entertainment industry or what, but if Kiss was the biggest band of '78 and the best they could come, it's not a feature film. It didn't it's not like playing opposite Godfather or whatever was out. It's just this crappy TV movie, and it really kind of shows that, there was a lot of hype how huge they were. But if this is the movie they're going to be in, I mean, how huge could they really have been?
Yeah, well, like you said, I mean, rock and roll is just not the movie business's prime, like what they want to work with until 30 years later, like something like the Doors movie where it's it's a project that's been building a legend,
And then it tanked.
Yeah, a lot of times.
No, I mean, even with Val Kilmer, the Doors movie, I think it tanked.
Well, I'm saying a lot of times they do tank. I don't know if it did.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that it makes sense. Hanna-Barbera was doing, a lot of cool stuff back then, but it was on a lower level than the movie stuff.
Right. Well, let's talk solo albums. So sometimes I wonder, sometimes we're talking I'll talk with someone and they don't know the band that well, and we kind of do surface, stuff like, oh, wasn't it sweet that Alice? I mean, not even picking on Alice in person, but Alice had eye makeup, and then, I get a person like you who's so into Kiss that we start talking about the minutia, and maybe some of the fans aren't as huge of fans, and they're like, dude, you're going way too obscure. But Kiss decided to do 4 solo albums at this time, and kind of weird. I guess, it wasn't successful, but part of the reason it wasn't successful is they weren't that good. I'm going to give my quick review, and you can rebut. I'm going to say that Paul Stanley's record had some meat and potatoes rock and roll, but nowhere near as good as any Kiss record. Even the best songs on that are only okay, and there's a lot of... I liked it maybe when it was... I never liked it that much. And Peter's just out and out horrible. No one should ever listen to it. And Jeans, I liked when I was a kid just because it took some weird chances, had some nice melodies, some nice like vocal hooks, but I don't listen to it anymore. And then Aces is good, but it's also overrated. A lot of Kiss fans will tell you Ace's record is like one of the greatest things of all time. And there are some cool songs on it. It's definitely the best, no question about it, but it's only good. Okay, what do you think?
It sounds like what you said, I agree with more than I thought that I was going to agree with did you say anything about Peter's album?
I said no one should ever listen to it.
Okay, that was quick. I missed that. But I heard what you said about the other 3, and I agree with you. And I kind of would say about the Peter Criss album that at first I couldn't even... The best sign of showing that I really did not like the album is I never could remember any songs from it. Yeah. Like, it's so not memorable. But being a hardcore Kiss fan and posting on message boards and having that discussion show that we were talking about earlier, it made me really want to examine it more. And I got to appreciate it more. As time went on, I decided I don't despise this as much as I thought that I always would. I guess that's the best way to say it. It's a weird... These sound like backhanded compliments, but it's just really how I feel. The song You Matter, to me, I'm like kind of a disco fan to begin with, and it's the most disco-y on there.
You know what? That's the only one I remember. If you asked me to hum or sing a little line of the entire album, that only one I could do is that one. Isn't it a cover, though?
I would say that the only one that's definitely like a known cover is Tossin' and Turnin'. I would think everything else was like a Penridge type thing. That's just my guess.
You know what? I could hum Tossin' and Turnin' too. So those probably are the two best. Yeah. But
Tossin' and Turnin' is the song that was the single. It was the song that they played during the Dynasty tour.
They did Tossin' and Turnin' live?
Yeah, they did like a solo. I think it was a medley of the 4 of them.
I knew they did. I've seen live footage of them do "Move On" by Paul Stanley's record, and then I think something by "Radioactive" by Gene. And I didn't know that they did anything by Ace or Peter. Although you'd think with Ace's selling the best, they probably did rip it out.
Well, one thing is for sure that there's a version of New York Groove with Eric Carr playing on it.
Of course they did New York Groove. That was the biggest single of all of them. So if they did Move On and Radioactive and New York Groove, then I'm sure Peter wouldn't have stood for not doing his at some point.
Yeah.
But, it's
weird.
They
never toured for the solo album, so they thought might as well give it a shot. It was more of, I think, a marketing thing than an ego thing.
The video footage I've seen of them doing Radioactive and Move On, they're in their Dynasty costumes. So
right, that's the time. That's right after the solo albums.
Right.
Is when they did the Dynasty. Dynasty had this big campaign, Kiss is back, because they had taken that little solo turn.
I'm going to say something. There's a lot of people, and there's books out on this, that the Dynasty show was going to be the show of shows. It was going to be, the Kiss was biggest, the stage was going to be bigger, the costumes were going to be bigger. They were going to do an amusement park in the parking lot that never panned out, but this was going to be the hugest show of all time, and I guess the money they sunk into it was just out of control. And even though they're playing sold-out places most of the place, they were losing money every single show. And, they told Kiss, you got to scale it back, And Kiss is like, no, if anything, we got to do even more stuff. We got to make it bigger and better and all that. And this is when the accountants were saying, these guys don't know what's up. But I have seen footage, and I wasn't in the shows because I was, 3 years old or whatever I was. But I haven't seen footage. But I haven't seen it live, but I've seen footage. And Dynasty stage is totally unimpressive. It's a it's a ramp that I think they reused on Crazy Nights. And it's some like pyramids underneath the drums. I mean, in what way does this rival the Tigers that flew Peter Criss up and down, just a couple years before in Love Gun, and or the Lions or whatever they were, and the craziness? I mean, the costumes are lame. They're all Broadway. I mean, Aces is kind of cool, and Gene's Molten thing I liked at one time, but there is nothing about that stage, and maybe it doesn't translate on video, that looks cool to me. It looks completely like if someone said, well, they ran out of money and had to half-ass it, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I can totally see that. So,
well, I'm right there with you. I mean, I wouldn't have any knowledge. I do know what you're talking about with that idea, the concept of super kiss is what C.K. Lent termed it. There was an actual term that they were using at the time, and Kiss and Sell, I think, was that the name of the book that C.K. Lent wrote? So, Super Kiss, and they lost a lot of money, and I didn't really, because I read that Kiss and Sell, and they didn't mention that the stage was crappy, but it might as well have been. I don't remember them saying that. Though.
Yeah, it looked like, it just looked sparse, I think, if anybody's opened up the gatefold of Alive 2, it looks like the greatest stage of all time. I mean, the entire stage is on fire, and there's some rumors that a lot of that fire is airbrushed in.
Yeah.
But even people who've been to the show, there was a lot of fire and stuff. And I think if I've seen some photos from 25 rows back or the back of the thing, and these were in arenas, and maybe not even the biggest, not like Staples Center today. They were in arenas of the 70s, and when you take a close-up photo, it looks like the biggest, most on-fire stage of all time. And they weren't in the Rolling Stones league. They weren't doing stadiums, but so I could see that maybe it was big for an arena-sized stage. But then you get to Dynasty's stage, and I don't know if if they were playing bigger halls, but it just doesn't look empty. I've never seen a photo where it's filled with fire, or even really anything. It just looks like this big empty stage with a ramp, and then these guys in these purple and light blue costumes running around.
Yeah. It sounds like you might be, onto something there, but I wouldn't know. I wasn't there, and and I've seen some footage, but like you said, it's hard to tell. You question yourself. Are we seeing the full effect of everything? Right.
But so we wouldn't, neither of us were there, but we have heard the Dynasty record. What do you think? I have an opinion, but I'll let you go first. I've been starting a lot of Dynasty, the album Dynasty.
Oh yeah. I love it. I think there's a vibe on it that Unmasked seems a little more blurry. I think there's something, even down to the 9-song selection, I think is reflective of a more decisive Kiss, whether Kiss is defined as the guys who were in the band at the time, or Anton Fig, who played drums on that, or, more specifically, Vinny Poncia. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, I don't know, but I know what you mean, the producer. All right, yeah. I tell you what. I've surprised you by being in lockstep with you earlier on. What do you think my opinion of Dynasty is?
Well, I would just be surprised if you liked anything from this point onward all that much. It just would be a surprise to me.
Okay, well, get this. I think I'm gonna blow your mind. I think Dynasty is a pretty damn good record. I think Dynasty is judged by "I Was Made for Loving You" and "Sure Know Something," which are 2 songs on it. And they're both disco or kind of wimpy and Paul songs. And if you strip those songs away, I defy anybody, please tell me what is disco about Dynasty. I mean, you've got, first off, Ace. I don't know how. I mean, Ace had a successful solo record, and then Ace was like, guess what, bitches? I'm not doing 1 song per album. I'm doing as much as Paul, doing 3 songs or whatever he did. As much as Gene, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's more than Gene.
More than Gene, probably. So Ace's songs are all cool. Hard Times. I mean, this is not going to be, the hit song anywhere, but Hard Times is good. Save Your Love is snarky and badass. And the Rolling Stones cover is one of those cases where, the cover kind of eclipses the original. I mean, more people talk about Ace's version. People don't. I mean, the Rolling Stones have some great songs, but no one considers 2000 Man one of them. But Ace's 2000 Man is certainly, one of his hallmarks.
Well, I have to say something, and I'm an overdramatic guy when it comes to stuff that I am passionate about, so take this with a grain of salt. But 2000 Man could possibly be the best cover ever recorded because if anybody's heard the original, it's a great song, and it's kind of cool how there's it's almost like two different songs to two different parts. But 2000 Man, whether Ace would have done it or somebody else, after hearing it, it needed to be done because it brings the song into more consistency together between the verses and the choruses and bridges or whatever. And it just needed to be done. And it's done beautifully by Ace, who I think is great,
Yeah. And Ace has a weird vocal delivery. It's kind of lazy and slightly atonal, but it works for that one, especially the fact that he's singing about disaffected guy in the future. And then I think Gene's X-Ray Eyes is cool. Charisma, I don't know. Charisma's okay. But, this album is really no worse than Love Gun for me. I mean, Love Gun has probably the higher highs, but this one's got some good quality. I mean, everybody just, you got I Was Made for Loving You, and they're like, that's the record. And it's not the record. That was just a single. So that's where I am with that.
Yeah, and if every song did reflect I Was Made for Loving You, it would be a very different album.
Definitely. So, I don't know. I feel we should go maybe one more album in, and then, who knows how it goes. But anyway.
Well, however you'd like to do it.
Well, I don't know. This is going pretty good. Okay, so, I mean, I feel like we're really barreling forward, not getting caught up in the minutia, but hopefully it's interesting to people who are less Kiss insane maniacs than you and I, but... That's why I wanted you on the podcast. I knew you definitely wouldn't be like, hey, I know Lick It Up and not much else. Let's do this thing. But Unmasked, what do you think?
Well, to me, it's kind of like going on that pop tip that Dynasty had, but taking it a little too far. And it's a little bloated at 11 songs, because of that. Although I have to say, there's some great stuff on there. The song Is That You is one of my favorite things that Kiss ever did.
It's a cover. Did you know that?
Yeah, I found that out later. There's some stuff on I was going to say on YouTube, if anybody wants to check it out, I think it might even be something that was from a Kissology disc of the original writer performing it on an acoustic, and it's just so interesting to hear his take on them covering his tune. But yeah, this is going to sound creepy, but Is That You is the only Kiss song I've ever dreamt about.
That is kind of creepy.
So there must be something magic about that song, I have to say, to get a little spiritual.
What else do you think about the record beyond that?
Well, I also have to mention, I could say a few more things. I'll try to keep it limited as we know, but Naked City, I love that song. It is so bizarre. And when Gene goes into the falsetto, and it's just, talk about creepy. I think I thought of that word not just because of my creepy personality and look on Kiss, and dreaming about them. But Is That You and Naked City both have kind of like a creepy, dark feel to it that helps legitimize, like I said, the rest of the album is kind of like over pop and over goofball. I mean, Torpedo Girl, I like Ace and all. I mean, but that's taking it a little too far. That's the thing when artists kind of they test their boundaries of what's cool or corny or whatever, and they take it too far. Torpedo Girl's too far. But a lot of good stuff on there. But those are my standout. Is That You and Naked City.
All right, well, I'm gonna have you quiz me again. What am I gonna say about this album?
Well, I would say something along the lines of what I said, which is it's on a pop tip, but it's not as good as Dynasty.
Right. And for my actual opinion,
okay,
Shiza! This album is fucking garbage. And it's funny that you bring up It's That You because it's one of the few things I can listen to. It's like Paul kind of being Paul of the old days where he's got some slight rock to him. But it's just a bad version. It's a bad version of I Stole Your Love or a bad version of Take Me or whatever. It's the only rock song on the record except for...
I think that's a great compliment you just gave the song, though. So.
It's the only rock song except for Torpedo Girl, which I like because it's Ace being Ace. It's not as good as Ace's Best, but it's Ace. and the rest is just what the fuck is going on here? It is awful. It's beyond awful. I would never listen to it. I don't own it. That's all I'm going to say.
I would never listen to it.
I would never, ever listen to it.
Yeah, it's not all that great. I mean, especially compared to everything we talked about so far, it's really not that great.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what? I'm saying let's. I'm making an audible. I'm making an audible on the field, like the great Joe Montana or Elway would, and let's continue on through the makeup years. I think this is going well. We're not taking too long, but it's going good. So let's go with The Elder. The Elder, for people who don't know, was Kiss getting Bob Ezrin back. And Bob Ezrin was responsible for their great success on Destroyer, and he was off the huge hit from The Wall, the Pink Floyd album, The Wall. And here he is, like, going to do a concept album now with Kiss. No one liked it, didn't sell well, tanked Kiss's career worse than it already was tanked from Unmasked. And Unmasked, they didn't even tour America on because their fan response was so tepid. And then they were going to try to tour on The Elder. They were going to try to make The Elder a movie, and they learned pretty damn quick that wasn't going to happen. What do you think?
Well, I think that it was a good attempt by them. I mean, Kiss has been known to say it was a good album. It's just not a Kiss album. And I tend to agree. I mean, yeah, over the years, I've kind of lost a lot of my vigor for the album. You have to understand that I had not, because it was such a hard album to get a hold of, I didn't get a hold of it until 1991. And when I did, I had this deal. It was a very hardcore Kiss fan that I had met, and we had both talked about that we knew all their stuff backwards and forwards, but had never heard The Elder. We sat down and listened to it together for the first time and passed the tape back and forth to each other as like a little ritual for the next couple years. And then I finally got it on CD around, let's say, 94 or something like that, and started to listen to it. And I thought it was the greatest album ever, blah, blah, blah. But, it eventually died down a bit. I really think it's so bizarre and interesting that it's fun. Now, there's stuff that's bizarre and interesting and just stupid, like Carnival of Souls is a great example of, like, them getting bizarre. It's not interesting. It just sucks. I think The Elder is good.
I don't like The Elder. I gave it enough of a chance. I kind of like Just a Boy. I mean, for corniness perspective. When I was a little kid, I liked but now it's just cringeworthy. But I wouldn't listen to The Elder. It's not good. It's not good at all.
I think is the song that suffers the most because of the Bob Ezrin production on there. If it was a little edgier or punchier,
does it have finger snaps or hand claps during the breakdown?
It does. That doesn't really help.
No. And you know what I did like is if you go on YouTube and you type in it's the Ace got too drunk to do a TV taping, and the three of them had to go on without Ace and lip sync to and it's pretty, like, you had to feel for those guys, or they had Paul. They worked hard. They really tried to sell it, but I don't know. So
it's a catastrophe.
there's an album not that many people know about called Kiss Killers, which is mostly greatest hits, but has 4 songs on them, and I probably would have just blown it off and not even treated it as an album, except for that your podcast, Partners in Crime, takes the name from one of the songs. So I figured we'd have to talk about that one.
Well, that was that Killers album was one of those things that certain things pushed me into being a bigger Kiss fan. The fact that it was not an American release and you kind of had to track it down, that was cool. And then the song selection was kind of like interesting. You had like this weird lineup of like Cold Gin, God of Thunder, Love Gun, of the stuff that was already released. It was weird because like Cold Gin was not a single. It was like a song that was more like just part of their rock and roll legacy, and yet they decided to include that rather than include like I don't know, Christine 16 or something. So I thought that was really cool. And then the 4 songs that were included on there that were new songs, it's a shame that none of them were Gene songs, were they? They were all Paul, weren't they?
Wait, there was Nowhere to Run, right?
Yeah.
I'm a Legend Tonight. Who was that?
That's Paul.
Partners in Crime, and what was the 4th one?
Oh man, is that the one? Are you ready to rock? Talk about blah blah blah. I'm spacing out right now.
I don't know, but
I
think they're all decent, but not great.
Yeah, well, and I want to say one thing. The one that I can't think of what the name that starts "Are You Ready to Rock?" It's got this very like meat and potatoes 4/4 on the floor AC/DC drum beat that starts the song off, and I thought, that's a good attempt. Whoever's playing drums, who the hell knows? But it's a good attempt by Paul Stanley and Kiss to get back after the Elder to like something that just rocks.
Well, the other thing about that was that, yeah, they exactly what you're saying. It's like, I think this was something saying, look, we're not completely just dropping the ball and becoming a wussy band. We're totally, down on your knees, Love in the First Degree.
I have it in front of me. I was just about to scream it on you, yeah.
But yeah, it's okay. But then I think it kind of set up Creatures of the Night. Maybe the final record we'll talk about on this one. And I mean, Creatures of the Night, one look at that album cover, you knew they weren't fucking around. There's no little wussy hand on a door like the Elder had, or stupid comic book. I shouldn't say that. I always thought the Kiss Unmasked album cover was pretty cool, but it was a comic strip. And this one, they got glowing eyes. It's nighttime. And you kind of, Ace Frehley's still on the album cover, even though he's not on the album itself. But, if he is on the album, you're like, fuck, dude, that dude started really practicing, because I haven't heard.
Really. Apologies, Ace, if you're listening.
Hey, Ace is a great guitar player, but hey, Judas Priest, when Painkiller came out, those dudes said, we're not going to get schooled by a bunch of punk kids. And they woodshedded to keep up. And, not that, and Judas Priest was great in the 70s and Ace was great in the 70s, but, this was definitely taking guitar playing in the more modern direction. But Creatures, I'm actually gonna guess what you're gonna say, and I'm gonna guess that you're not a giant fan of Creatures. Well, actually, maybe I should. Maybe you are, because it's very Gene heavy, especially like the memorable songs. Go ahead.
Well, now you're gonna get a cold, hard reality check. Creature of the Night is probably my favorite Kiss album.
No shit.
Yeah, I mean, I really like, Dress to Kill and the debut and stuff like that. But
I like Dress to Kill.
Creatures of the Night, I got into, I told you there was a few things that pushed me into Kiss. I would say the most major thing was Dee Snider introducing I Love It Loud on one of those early MTV heavy metal shows that they did.
And the I Love It Loud video.
You may be too young to remember, but Dee Snider had the early version of what became like Headbangers Ball.
Oh, but I have seen the I Love It Loud video, and that is, I mean, it doesn't look cool like modern videos look cool, but I could imagine at the time you're like, holy shit. But I will say I never saw it. Go ahead. I never saw the I Love It Loud video on MTV or anywhere else until like Kiss exposed VHS or YouTube or something. It was like MTV never played it, but it's pretty badass. You wish they'd had.
Well, this was around 1984 or 1985 when Dee Snider and Stay Hungry was like riding high, and he introduced the song by saying, yeah, we're going to do something, and it's going to be Kiss when they had their makeup on, as if it was like years ago, like classic. And I had no idea what was going on. So I see this video, and as far as I was concerned, it was like, 10 years ago or whatever, but it had actually only been a couple years or so since that they had shown it. And that made me want to get Creatures of the Night and Destroyer were my first two vinyl buys. So, and this was, like I said, it was right around after Animalize came out. So Asylum was my first new album, but Creatures of the Night and Destroyer were my first actual albums that I heard. And I remember listening to Destroyer and being so let down at that time because, because Creatures of the Night was what I expected them to sound like.
Oh, like fucking metal.
Yeah, it was scary. It was like, this is the band that I'm into, like when I heard Destroyer. But then it all started sinking in, and I became like a big fan of all eras soon after that. But it was a little freaky to hear the production on Destroyer, because I had heard Destroyer was like this big album, and the name Destroyer implies some kind of heaviness.
Yes, and the album cover, they're freaking stomping all over a city.
Exactly. So the Creatures of the Night had a really great album cover too, as you stated, and then I heard it, and still to this day, I love it. I think that Killer is like an incredible song, but as incredible as it is, and Rock and Roll Hell and
Wait, I'm
Danger
going to
and all
stop
that,
you. I'm going to stop you because I'm vibing that you're going to talk about the fucking most badass Gene has ever gotten.
No, I'm not. I am not going to talk about War Machine.
Oh, we got to talk. All right, you go and talk about
I will,
right.
but I'm just, what I was leading up to was I think Saint and Sinner could be Gene's best song he's ever put to wax.
Oh, come on. Not on an album with War Machine. I mean, let's talk about this.
Well, I mean, War Machine is great. And I've heard it discussed on message boards many times.
War Machine is like fucking the sister song. I mean, some people have complained they think it's not as good as God of Thunder.
Yeah.
But I mean, or that it's kind of trying to be the new God of Thunder.
Yeah.
But I mean, come on, fucking War Machine.
I don't know about that. I will say, I mean, you got to understand, I love War Machine. I think it's fucking great. It was, such a big part of the set list when I went to see them live in the 80s.
And it was
like
a lot faster in the 80s, if you've seen.
What's that?
War Machine, they really sped it up in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, and that's bound to happen at a rock show.
Yeah.
Speeding up the tunes. But War Machine, I know it's got that groove that it certainly would be nice if they kept it down, the BPMs a little bit. But what's neat about War Machine that I can say, even though I might think Saint and Sinner is a better song, War Machine is really great, and it's got that, that bow-now, that riff that just everybody loves, that Gene would say that, Stone Temple Pilots, stole, he made fun of it once. I saw a thing where he
sex tape thing or something?
And started singing, I am,
I'm going to stop you
Is that the one that goes, I am?
Yeah,
Want to
yeah.
get close to you? And I think one of the reasons why Stone Temple Pilots emulated that riff, maybe, obviously they're Kiss fans and all that, but that is just so classic. I mean, you're a guitar player. You've played that riff before. It's
of course.
Cool.
And the thing about that riff is how easy it is. And just like Iron Man or Smoke on the Water, I mean, some of the, those are getting a little played out, but some of the reason that people can't come up with such great riffs sometimes is that they can't imagine something that simple could be good. They try to do something really complex. I mean, think of, what's Pantera's best riff? It's fucking Walk, and what is that? Two notes with a bend. I mean, fuck. So.
Yeah, it makes me sick when people think the way that you're describing. It just makes me sick because it shows that the humanity doesn't really. Man, they just don't know what's up.
Well, I think Creature's a great album. I think. Mostly I like Paul's stuff more than Gene's, especially in the 80s. I don't like anything Gene did practically. I mean, I love Lick It Up stuff, but, I thought he just pretty much did nothing between Lick It Up and Unholy. But, he kind of blew Paul's stuff away on this record a little bit. And I don't know if we're going to go any further record-wise because I think we've hinted at it. This, we could talk about Ace leaving the band. We could talk about we didn't even mention Peter left the band. We didn't even give a shit. But I think some people might be interested in this Paul versus Gene dynamic because, I think Ace is undoubtedly the coolest guy Kiss ever had because Ace just had that. I mean, you couldn't have had four Aces because Ace didn't give a fuck, and you can't have a successful band with four guys who don't give a fuck. But Ace reaps the benefits of having this Paul and Gene foundation that he can not give a fuck on top of. But, for people who aren't the biggest Kiss fans of the world, I mean, Paul and Gene really did the heavy lifting from the very first days, even when it was a four equal members, and they kept it alive during the 80s when the other two were gone, and then they're the only two remaining members. But I think it's interesting because Paul versus Gene. I'm a Paul guy. I mean, Paul wrote a lot of great stuff. Paul was a badass rock. We didn't even talk about the songs on the live too, and I think All American Man is a great song. But Gene had a cool persona, but it was a bit of a cheeseball. His personality is absolutely insufferable these days. But I know you're a Gene fan, so this could be a good end to the conversation on a little bit of what you think here. Like I know you said you can't even deal with Paul anymore, and I just can't even deal with Gene. Not that I think current Kiss is just such a pale imitation of their old days. But what do you think? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, this has everything to do with separating the personality, because I don't think Gene's like that cool of a guy. Like I couldn't see myself enjoying talking to him or hanging out with him. I mean, we share certain interests like superheroes and stuff like that, but he seems like, like pretty much a dick. Paul Stanley seems pretty much like a dick. The difference is that I can key into there are certain people, and they can fall down the stairs, and I'll enjoy it. Whereas somebody else, they can paint the Mona Lisa, and I won't like it because I key into their personality. It's the same thing with David Lee Roth. And I will discuss his work and say most of it's pretty bad, like his solo work, for example. But I would much rather see Gene or Roth do something poorly than see Paul Stanley do something great these days, for sure. Like, you take something like, his solo album, that's the best that he could do after years of not doing a solo album. So supposedly that's a great album by Paul Stanley fans' standards. I think it's horrible, insufferable to listen to. I think it's everything that I don't like about Paul Stanley that basically started on his first solo album. And so the thing is, as Paul Stanley matured, he became more of the guy that I didn't like. As Gene Simmons matured, he kind of stayed the same as far as the music went, and actually did some stuff that was even more pleasing. Like, I will always talk about Asshole as being one of the greatest things, that Kiss-related things that's ever been put out.
So you're like the only one. I'm not going to talk about it. I never even bothered to listen. But I know not a lot of people liked it, but you liked it, huh?
Oh, yeah. And just like I despised Live to Win, I really enjoyed Asshole, and it's probably a lot for those reasons that I just said, besides the fact that I think there's a lot of good songwriting and performances on Asshole. I mean, and that's the best way to sum up, off the top of my head, on how I feel about Gene versus Paul. Gene I can key more into his artistic vision.
Well, since we never got into the non-makeup years, and, there's a finite time for everything, but where did Paul drop the ball during the makeup years where Gene was keeping it classic?
Well, I think the ideal Kiss fan would say a song like, what is it, Secretly Cruel, or there's like a song or two off of Asylum, for example, that could have been, there's this guy, was it Secretly Cruel, that the guy that wore all the Kiss makeup and did a classic version of an Asylum song? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's embarrassing to admit that I do. There's a guy on YouTube who put
What do you
Gene.
mean?
It's not embarrassing, but it's just like you mentioned the most obscure thing that 99.999% of people in the world would be like, no, I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm like, I know exactly who you mean.
So is it Secretly Cruel?
It was Secretly Cruel, and it was a guy who took an 80s Gene song and did it 70s style, and it was like, wow, if this was on Rock and Roll Over, you wouldn't have blinked because of the way he did it.
So and that's great, and I gotta admit there are moments on Asylum, and I particularly like the production on Asylum better than that whole '80s era. Anything else?
Okay, give me some Paul songs that people like that you're just like, oh God, it just is nails on a chalkboard for me.
Oh well, from this album, I will tell you right now, I don't get all the love for Who Wants to Be Lonely. Everybody
Asylum
loves it, and I don't think it's all that great. Whereas you take a song like Any Way You Slice It, I love that.
What about 70s? You like Paul in the 70s, and then he fell apart in the 80s? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Well, if you want to sum it up so black and white, I'll say you're pretty close, yeah.
Okay, so you're not, Paul's stuff, on these makeup records, it's not, oh crap, another one up by Paul, I can't stand it. It took till the 80s.
No, and if you listen back to our little thing, you'll hear.
Yeah, Take Me.
To that, yeah.
And I think it's sort of the same, up until, I kind of, I just think everything's so bad on Asylum and Crazy Nights and Hot in the Shade. I couldn't single out Paul versus Gene, but Paul did have the singles. At least Paul was trying. I felt like Paul was trying to pander to get a single, but Gene just wasn't trying at all. Gene was just making demo tapes and going, I'm busy. This is all you're getting.
Yeah, and Paul didn't care because Paul he probably really relished. Wouldn't you agree that Paul probably relished the fact that he was getting all the attention by being the guy that was the lead singer on all the singles?
Paul's a little like me that will bitch that they have to do all the work in a band, but then when the time comes, they kind of just they're kind of a control freak and want it their way anyway, so they A, get to bitch that they're not getting any help, and B, get to do it, get to twiddle the knobs exactly the way they want it. So I think
I think you may be right with that.
Yeah. Well, we can't go on and on forever about this, but I think I'm gonna have you. I think Heavy Metal War Stories is evolving, and I think we're gonna do some episodes where it's a little light on the history and maybe more on something else. But I think for a historical perspective on rock, if we get back to Van Halen, or if we get on what other bands, what other big Quiet? Well, I had Rudy on, and I
gotta take what you can get.
I had Rudy Sarzo on, and I didn't talk that much about Quiet Riot.
That's horrible. Oh man,
it isn't horrible, because my first episode was the Randy Rhoads episode, and then I had Rudy on. I mean, a legend in his own right, but he played like all those shows with Randy Rhoads. But I'd already done Randy Rhoads. I couldn't, dedicate the whole thing to Randy Rhoads. So
it's a delicate. This is a delicate thing, man.
It is. It's a delicate thing, and I'm glad we got as far as we did. We did excellent work for. I mean, I hope people who are just, quasi Kiss fans will like it. I know the diehard fans will have been interested, but I want to thank you for lending your opinions and knowledge on Kiss to the podcast. And I don't know. Hope you had a great time.
I want to say for the record that this is just what I love doing. This makes life, more enjoyable. So, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Hugh, everyone. The leader of Partners in Crime, the KISS podcast, and I think you can Google it. He says he's taking some time off, but he will be back.
Yeah, we're taking some time off, but please know that we're going to come back with a vengeance. You were talking about Skype and things like that. I don't know, but we're going to up the ante because, like I said, I love this, and if I can do it at all, it's great. So thank you.
Thank you,
very
Hugh.
much, too.
I'll talk to you soon. Hugh on Heavy Metal War Stories. Wow, that was an in-depth look at most of Makeup era Kiss. I hope you liked it. You would have to pretty much be a Kiss fan to get into that one. I know we really nerded out on that, but fuck, you saw Kiss in the subject line and you downloaded it. Not my fault if you're not a Kiss fan, because, go back and listen to your Escape to Fate and My Chemical Romance in that case. Anyway, that concludes this episode of Heavy Metal War Stories. I thought it went well. Subscribe to us on iTunes. I know a lot of people listen to these things and say, hey, I listened to one episode. It was awesome. Do you have any others? I'm like, yes, we have tons. Just subscribe in iTunes, and you'll get them all delivered to you. So go iTunes Store, search Heavy Metal War Stories, or search Stevie Peavy. And thank you for listening to my new song by Death Squad Demon Gods called Death Squad Demon Gods. I like it. I hope you did too. And I'll see you soon on Heavy Metal War Stories. Stevie Peavy, over and out, as Paul Stanley might say.